So we're going to look at a topic on the conceptual framework and some theoretical underpinnings. And this question has a case study from our CBU paper. It reads as follows. Customer loyalty may be increasingly improved by a company's corporate image. With quick response, the company's reputation would improve, as would the number of guests who use the hotel services. This is according to Madinga of 2019 and Leo and Ferrari of 2020. Corporate image is an essential source of comfort for visitors since it informs them that they are receiving the finest service possible. Accordingly, maintaining a positive corporate image is critical for hotel business since it influences customer perceptions. Stated that image of a hotel assists in influencing opinions of employees, according to Lahab et al. Et al. Means and others. Previous studies found a favorable relationship between corporate image and customer loyalty in India. Taking in China, given the importance of corporate image in increasing customer loyalty, it is hypothesized that our H10 or HO is that corporate image positively affects customer loyalty. And the question goes on to say, elucidate the purpose of a conceptual framework and theoretical underpinnings. Then, in the case above, to explain how does the development of hypothesis conform to acceptable criteria for theoretical contribution to knowledge, and also undertake a disquisition of the different types of variables in question 1 and question 2. Okay, so this is a case study, like many questions would come. You'll be required to analyze your questions. So firstly, I would just want to take you through what a conceptual framework is and what its purpose is, so that you may appreciate any question that may come with regards to that. So when we're dealing with research in social sciences, we always want to explain relationships that exist between the variables to solving problems. So researchers here want to achieve their outcome using what we call conceptual framework, using theories, using hypotheses, and different types of variables to guide their studies. So we start with what a conceptual framework is. So what is a conceptual framework? And what is involved in the conceptual framework? What do we find in conceptual framework? So a conceptual framework basically is a model, it's a structure, okay? A logical structure that explains the relationship between the variables in the study. It's like a roadmap which guides the researcher throughout the research process on how our research will be. So in the conceptual framework, we're able to identify the variables that are there. It's also able to show us the types of relationships that are there. It also helps us to guide on what kind of data collection method we're going to use. The conceptual framework itself will help us in doing our data analysis interpretation. So a conceptual framework also helps to support the hypothesis development. So what is contained in a conceptual framework? So in the conceptual framework, we have what we call the independent variables. So these are the factors that cause a change, right? And we have what we call the dependent variables, which are the outcome. We have what we call the mediating variables. These are simply the variables that explain the relationship. We also have the moderating variables. These are simply variables that um, affect the strength. They are mainly about the strength of the relationship. So we also have the control variables, which are simply variables that do what? That are controlled to reduce bias. So in this case, we can look at our example so that we identify what type of relationship, what type of variables do we have in here. So reading the case of which will be given, you would be asked to identify your independent or dependent variable. So in this case, clearly, our independent variable will be corporate image. Okay, we said the independent variable is simply what? The factors that cause change, and the dependent is the outcome. Our outcome that we want to look at is customer loyalty. And the independent variable is what? Corporate image. So it can be hypothesized. We can see it in our hypothesis. So using our hypothesis, we can tell what we are looking for. So the question now that follows is that what um, what is the importance of the conceptual framework? Why is it important? And what are theoretical underpinnings? Why do we look at theories? Why are they important for us to analyze? So, what is the importance of a conceptual framework? There are many kinds of reasons why we need a conceptual framework. Number one is that it helps to give us direction. The conceptual framework helps to give direction. Okay? It also simplifies the relationships, the causal relationships. It simplifies them in a way that we're able to explain how this affects that because the arrows. It also helps researchers remain focused. So conceptual framework is like your what? Your if you're building a house, it's the plan. It also makes it easy for us to understand. So the conceptual framework is what supports the testing theories. So without a conceptual framework, research becomes disorganized, it becomes unclear. So there are also what we call theoretical underpinnings. These are simply theories that will support your research. These ones, they explain why certain relationships exist. Okay? There are theories that have already been established that are there. They help us to predict the outcomes, to explain the relationship, and also to build a hypothesis. So these theoretical underpinnings are there to provide scientific support. For instance, we're looking at what? Motivation. Obviously, what comes to your mind is Maslow's what? Hierarchy of needs. So now, in this course, this is where the combination of all what we've been learning from management gets to apply. So some of the theories should be obvious. If you're dealing with entrepreneurship, you should know what theories must be there. Okay? So we also need to understand these types of common theories in research. What theories do you know in research? Just generally, from your management. They will always be there somewhere, somehow. So I'll give you a few examples of researches that at least you must know by heart that should be applicable. We have what we call the social identity theory. So of what we call the service profit chain theory. There's what we call the attribution theory. These are the common theories that you need to know. So the social identity theory is a theory that helps people identify themselves with organizations uh, which have good reputation. So if you're working for MTN, for instance, you align yourself with the social identity theory because you become loyal or proud to be a part of that company because of what it does, especially when it comes to CSR. And also from the perspective of customers, they remain loyal to um, hotels that have a positive image. We also have what we call the service profit chain theory. It's a theory that explains that good service quality will lead to what? Customer satisfaction and loyalty and increased profit. So it's called the service profit chain theory. So it's a chain profit, the service. So these are theories you need to know. We also have the attribution theory, which is a theory that states that customers interpret experiences. So a customer may attribute a certain excellent experience to a certain hospital, a certain
Mhm.
um, as a particular hotel. So each hotel or restaurant have their own signature meals. So if I'm going to myself in Dollar, uh, Indian foods, I know which place to go. So this is backed up by this theory called the attribution theory. Okay, so these are just not the only theories, but some of the theories that should come to your mind because at least they're easy to remember. They are general, they are generic in nature when you're looking at the different types of theories.
Okay, so Colin, this is what is in the pamphlet.
Yes, this is what is in the pamphlet. I've put everything in the pamphlet.
Oh,
Yes, I'm just
you
trying
have
to
done well.
simplify
Okay.
this as we get. So all the
Uh,
papers that you gave me are already in the pamphlet. Okay.
okay.
So
So
before we
now, since we
answer,
are remaining with 10 minutes, can we plan on the the physical session, especially the calculations?
so we need to understand hypothesis development. So what is a hypothesis? Is simply a testable statement that will predict relationships between the variables, being dependent and independent variable. So in our case here, corporate image, we're given this positively affects what? Customer loyalty. What does this mean? It simply means that improving the image of a hotel is expected to increase what? The loyalty of the customers. As simple as that. So the characteristics of a good hypothesis, it must be clear, meaning the relationship between must be understandable, but must be testable, meaning we should be able to collect data to scientifically and statistically test that. It must be based on a theory. So we need to know which theory this comes from. So the hypothesis should come from existing theories or literature. It must be specific, meaning it should be what? Identifiable. So these variables, you cannot miss them. This is what a good um, hypothesis must have. All right. So now we also need to understand the importance of the hypothesis. We say this for direction to help in statistical testing to also link a theory to practice. So I've talked about the types of variables. Which types of variables have I mentioned so far? What types of variables did I talk about?
Independent,
Yes.
but I can remember them. Yes, independent. It's just that I'm still at the office, but I know it's that section with independent
Yes.
variables and all that. Yes.
Yes. Independent and dependent variables. Okay, so now, besides knowing the general, I've talked about mediating variables, I've talked about dependent variables, I've talked about independent variables. Okay, so we need to actualize our case studies here. So the lecturer wants you to appreciate which ones are the independent and which ones are the dependent variables from our hypothesis that we had. So we said we have independent variables, we have dependent variables, okay? So we said independent variables are simply what? The variables that influence another, okay? That is what we call an independent variable. It's simply what? The input. The independent variable is simply the output in simple terms, okay? So the independent variable is the variable that influences the other variable. So which examples from our case study? We can talk about corporate image. Okay, we can talk about service quality. We can talk about the product price. All these are variables that will influence what? The behavior of the customer. And the dependent variable is our outcome that we want to measure. So these ones, corporate image, they'll measure what? The output, which is customer loyalty. Maybe service quality, they also affect the sales performance. Okay, even the quality and the price will also affect what? The positive word of mouth. So the dependent variables are simply what? Variables that change because of the independent variables. Of course, we also have what we call the mediating variables, the control variables, and the moderating variables. Do you remember what these ones mean? Do you remember the mediating variables, the control variables? What are they? Okay,
Yes, I do remember. 'Cause I'll check through the notes. I
okay,
haven't
check
been
through the notes.
studying, but I know you have, yeah, yes, but I know you have already presented on them.
All right, okay, yes. So the variables that I mentioned, we're going to now pinpoint them from the case study. Okay, so just to quickly mention them, I said the mediating variables, the control variables, and the moderating. Usually people have a problem with differentiating the mediating variable and the moderating variable. So one is for strength, whereas the other one is for direction. So when talking about mediating variable, it explains how and why the relationships occur. For instance, customer satisfaction may explain how corporate image will affect loyalty. So the corporate image affects customer loyalty. How? Through customer satisfaction. So customer satisfaction is what we call the mediating variable. The moderating variable is what affects the strength or direction. So for instance, age or culture, these ones will affect the how strongly corporate image may affect what? Loyalty. Then we also have control variables. These are variables uh, or factors that are kept constant to avoid having what? Misleading results. So all these are very important when it comes to our research. So With that being said, I think I could now quickly go to the question so that we see how it was answered. So I would also make mention to say that as you answer these questions, you must also understand the types of other variables that may not be here. We also have what we call categorical variables. What are categorical variables? These are variables that represent groups, okay? Like gender, marital status, education level. They are called categorical because they're often analyzed using frequencies. We also have continuous variables. These are variables that can take any numerical value like income, age, the loyalty scores. They are used on a continuous scale. They are analyzed using regression and correlation. So when we're measuring the performance, we to know how well a business is doing, we can use two major approaches. We have what we call the objective perspective, and also there's what we call the what's that? I was seeing the other time. It's called the perceptual measures. Okay, so all these measures are very important. So if you're looking objective, it's based maybe on financial or operational record, like profits, sales, and returns. Okay, then you're looking at perceptual, we're looking at what? Based on opinions. So these are important, um, very much important in research that you understand these elements. So now we go to our question now. So I read the case study, which I'm just going to paraphrase to say it's talking about corporate loyalty, corporate social, corporate image and loyalty. Okay, so we've read say loyalty may increase the image of a company. With quick response, a company's reputation may improve because the number of guests who use the services using corporate image use that as an essential source of comfort for visitors since it informs them of what they are receiving. Then, according to the number of scholars, corporate image is very critical for hotel business because it influences the perception of customers, stated by this author. Okay, so it also mentions that image of a hospital of a hotel will assist in influencing opinions of what? This is what I'm talking about, the perception of employees and also media forecasters and investors. Previous studies found a favorable relationship between corporate image and loyalty. Given the importance of corporate image and loyalty, the following is the hypothesis. So, question number one, we asked that there's. So, I've just summarized this entire case, okay? For those of you who just joined, so that we now answer together. So, now, question number one, we're being asked to say now, based on the case above, we're being asked to do what? To explain the purpose of the conceptual framework and the theoretical underpinnings. What is the purpose of um, conceptual framework and the theoretical underpinnings? What did we say? We said the purpose is to show the relationship between what? The variables, the independent and dependent variables. So we can simply summarize part A, that's about how many marks? 3 marks as follows. So what's the purpose of a conceptual framework? Number one, we can say to identify the independent dependent variables. Number two, to help in data collection. Number three, to explain the expected relationships. Number four, to keep the study focused. Then, what is the purpose of the theoretical underpinnings? These are theories that support the research, okay? For instance, the social identity theory, it explains that customers prefer to be associated with organizations that have a positive reputation. And also the profit chain theory suggests that good service quality improves what? So these are just examples that I gave. You may not know them, but you need to know that they help to support what? The research in that regard. Is that clear? So you get your 4 marks. I don't want you to lose any marks on anything. This is the easiest part because we haven't done the calculations yet. So in the case above, how does the development of hypothesis conform the acceptable criteria for theoretical contribution in to knowledge? Okay. Explain how hypothesis conforms to an acceptable criteria for theoretical um, contribution to knowledge. So we'll base these on the hypothesis that were given in our example. What hypothesis were we given? We're given the hypothesis that what corporate image positively affects customer loyalty. So how important it is it? Number one, we can say that the hypothesis conforms to accepted criteria for theoretical contribution in several ways. It's number one, bases on existing literature. So this theory is supported by previous studies that were done in Turkey, in China. Okay, so early researchers have found that corporate image conforms, it improves, so it is based on what has already been written. Number two, it is grounded in theory. So the hypothesis is supported by the social identity theory, the service profit theory. So these theories explain why customers become what? Loyal customers with positive reputations. Then number three, it is testable, meaning it can be tested using questionnaires, regression, or even a structural equation. Okay, so it's measurable. Number four, there's a clear relationship between the variables. So the hypothesis has number one, the independent variable, which is corporate image. Number two, the dependent variable, which is what? Customer loyalty. Are we together? So are those, are you resonating with where I'm coming from? We're together?
Yes, we are together.
Yes, so it is testable. It also gives these clear relationships. It's relevant. It's simple, simplicity. So the hypothesis is simple and direct and easy to understand. Okay. It also encourages for future research, meaning it will create opportunities for others who want to research to on related matters regarding customer satisfaction. Okay. Maybe you can look at service quality as well. It can be expanded to looking at other variables as well. So how many marks was that? 8 marks. So undertake a disquisition of the different types of variables in question one and two. So what are the different variables that we have looked at in the question at hand? And maybe perhaps we can give an example of each of them. So we've looked at different variables, starting with the dependent variable being what? The outcome. The dependent variable is the outcome, which is customer loyalty. The independent variable, which is a variable that causes a change, which is what? Corporate image or personal quality. We also have the control variables. These are variables that must be negated to avoid bias, like gender, education. These are control variables. The mediating variables is what will explain the relationship. So here we look at customer satisfaction. The categorical variable, they are grouped into categories like gender. We also have the continuous variables, which can be measured numerically, like the loyalty scores or the image ratings. So these are the variables we can talk about. Okay, just to reemphasize whatever I said, I've said that the independent variables, they influence other variables. The dependent variables are the outcomes of the research that the researcher wants to explain. The control variables, they help reduce the alternative explanations. And the mediating variables, they explain how um, the variables or categorical are grouped into classes or categories. And also continuous variables, they take any numerical values. Those are the variables we're talking about. Okay, so lastly, but not the least, distinguish um, among the objective and perceptual measures of a firm, the importance in research and why uh, that particularly is important to SMEs in developing countries. I read the question again. Distinguish among objective and perceptual measures of a firm performance in research and why it is particularly important that SMEs have this in developing countries. So I was trying to explain in the latter part to say they're what we call perceptual and objective measures in performance. So what are the objective measures? I said objective measures are based on what? On financial data. Okay, look at sales growth, satisfaction. Those are perceptual. Those are objective measures. So quickly, objective measures of a firm are based on the financial and operational data that can be verified, like the profit levels, the sales revenue, the return on assets, the market share. So these are considered to be more accurate because they are based on real records. So we also have the perceptual, which are based on opinions and judgments. Okay. So when you're doing research, you need to understand that these are the two main measures that we have. We have perceptual. That's why when you're looking at the impact of what? Profitability of a particular company. you need to use the objective measures. You need to have their financial statement. How many employees are there? What is the return on assets? Okay. Then the perceptual, you use judgment, opinions. You can use a questionnaire. Okay. And a Likert scale to just give you approximate figures. Examples, our business performs better than competitors. How? Just a perception. Or customer satisfaction has improved. So these are perceptual. So the key differences between these two, you can see that the objective, they use financial data, whereas perceptual uses opinions. The objective measures are more accurate and verifiable. Here, perceptual, it's easier and cheaper to collect. Just want to use opinion. The objective here, they will require you having proper records, whereas the perceptual, you do not need formal records. And objective, they are difficult to obtain from SMEs, whereas perceptual, we just use surveys. So now, what is important is in the SMEs in the developing sector, the perceptual are particularly very important in our developing countries because many SMEs don't keep proper records, okay? And business owners fear sharing financial information because of taxes, and many SMEs they operate informally, okay, and illegally. So it makes the objective data difficult to access. Then also perceptual data is cheaper and faster. Just do a questionnaire. You just know this year we are doing better. Okay. They also capture the non-financial aspects that the objective cannot capture, like customer satisfaction, the business survival, and owner's confidence. So these are captured in there. Are we together? So this is the difference
Yes.
between those two.
Mm.
All right. So
Okay.
um, this is how we answer this question. So I'm not going to go into the other questions for now. I will
Okay.
end here.